Okay, we are in.
Hey, see those people fill in.
Hey.
Oh, I'm going to pause the recording.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining us. It's our pleasure. We know you have a lot of options, and it's an honor and a pleasure to have you join us today. For the next 90 minutes, the number one requirement I always say is we're going to have a lot of fun. Feel free to participate as much as you feel comfortable. Share your video or keep it off. We have three amazing guests, Gil Friend, Amanda Kathryn Roman, and Dr. Ash Bhachary, that I'm very much looking forward to introducing you all to the amazing work they're doing right at the intersection of consciousness and capital. We have, please feel free at any time to include your questions in chat for the next 90 minutes. And just to let you know, the links are live in chat. You may have difficulties copying. Please feel free, as someone suggested, Mr. Gilfriend, to use your pen to take down. We'll adjust the settings, but the difficulties is grabbing it. But the links are live in there. So I'm excited to dive in, to roll up our sleeves. Let me introduce, for those of you that know Lawrence or don't know Lawrence, Lawrence is the chairman and founder of Future Capital. He is the CEO and founder of Conscious Capital Wealth Management, where we allow individuals to express themselves, their beliefs with their investments unapologetically. We deal with investments, coaching, and consulting on Conscious Capital Wealth Management. He is also the author of The Secrets of the Seasons, where the most important thing, the most important asset that we have in this world is our reason for being here and the transformational work that he does. But I can go on and on. I'm going to stop right there. Lawrence, I'm going to pass it right to you.
Please do. Thank you. So it's really wonderful. We have, three amazing individuals who are going to be speaking today and engaging us. And I also want to recognize, from probably almost every part of the world represented here, we have amazing people who are part of this community. And so what I want to let everybody know is that when we go through this, we're going to have some conversations with each of the speakers. Then the speakers are going to have conversations kind of amongst themselves, with me staying out of the way as much as possible. And then we're going to really just, during that time, open it up to everybody with the speakers. And then after that, really allow our community to come up with, we'll ask a couple open-ended questions maybe, but really to come up with whatever's on their mind, whatever they're working out in the world and want to share collaboratively. So that's kind of the agenda for this time we have together. And because there's, as I said, a lot of people watch this as a recorded session. So, right now we don't have a ton of people on. So we like to bring everybody on and they can just kind of jump in when they feel so motivated during the time of this. So just to settle us for a minute, I want to really just give remind the essence of Future Capital, which really was spawned by a very simple principle, yet profound, which is that the most powerful thing that our species possess is our consciousness and this thing called capital. And just to unwind that a little bit is obviously consciousness being determined as anything that is manifested out into the world from our thoughts before it moves into actions. And the second is this thing called capital, that we've created this man's most externally powerful tool. And I think most of us realize that the state of where we are as beings is not necessarily on the best trajectory right now. And if we want to make a shift in the world with the most impactful time in the shortest amount of time, then it makes sense to grab our two most powerful tools and make the shifts within those. That's the essence of this. Sometimes we can get lost in words about what's consciousness and what's capital, but I think we all know that intuitively of what we're dealing with here. And so what we do once a month is we have this getting together of these beautiful people, and then we highlight three people who are doing some amazing work around the world. Now, I really want to make sure that everybody understands this. One of the main things about Future Capital that when we had our inaugural meeting at the United Nations, which of course this year we had to do remotely, But one of the main things we really wanted to focus on was action. We feel there's enough talk in the world. Now that has its place, but we're not a place to sit around and muse. We're highlighting people who are out in the world taking massive action in this nexus of consciousness and capital. And so simply what we do once a month is we just gather 3 of those people, have conversations and have some fun. And the expectations are pretty simple. Individually, we become inspired. You can't help it, trust me. For those of you who know or in this community, it happens every month. Bilaterally, you might be like, oh man, I can't believe somebody's doing that because I'm doing something like this. Let me reach out and connect with them. And that is incredibly powerful. And one of the things that we are so proud of at Future Capital is not having to take credit for things. You know, so many organizations that stand out there with their ego and say, you know, we're doing this and doing this and doing this. You know, we are happy to seed this out to the world and let this magic just spread out like ripples in the world. So really the bilateral is the second part of the magic, right? And so I please, if something tickles you with what someone's saying as the 3 main speakers or even afterwards, don't be shy. That's a sign that you should really reach out to them individually. And we'll make sure that we have time for that. And then the third is collectively. So sometimes there's something that comes together where something takes root. And when it takes root, what we do as an organization is we start to water that. We start to feed that and we start to gather more people around that so it can grow. We have a couple projects like that that are current right now. Because I don't want to take up too much airtime, I'm not going to get into it, but one individual, Kathryn Patel and Stephen, and I'm Frank, and I'm going to miss somebody, Gil. Who else is on the Capital Project? Did I cover everybody? I think who's on this call. There's Kathryn. Look at that, right on cue from England. Thank you, Kathryn.
Perfect.
So, well done. That was perfectly orchestrated, right, Kathryn?
I didn't want you to miss. I
The
didn't want you to
magician.
miss Stephen and Kathryn and Terry and anybody else, just in case. But I know you had them. It's fine.
Absolutely. Thank you. We all know I need a lot of help sometimes to make sure I cover those things. So thank you, Kathryn. And so really a brilliant, brilliant project that's happening. Again, during our conversations at the end of this, you know, we can get into that a little bit more if we want, but I really want to move on with the introduction of Future Capital. And so in order to make this possible is not just these incredible people that are doing the working groups and our community in general, but also the people who have been really part of the leadership community and have been working tirelessly with us. By the way, just a little news alert, we have been happily a non-entity from the beginning because we're really allowing this to become itself. We will be announcing something probably in a couple months that I think we're going to be moving beyond that, but we're going to have some more conversations with the leadership team as things begin to move forward with us. But enough of me. Which is the internal joke here when I say I'm going to be brief.
So I'm so glad you kept it brief. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think
Yeah.
I'm keeping on time too, so it's even better. So I'm going to hand it over to Patty, Steve, and Heather to say hello, who's part of our leadership team. Then what we're going to do is we're going to move into a moment of silence and all come together and bring ourselves together, our souls together. There's a wonderful story about the Native Americans when they were being shipped from place to place on the trains and being forced to sign treaties. And they'd be sitting in the train stations and the white men would be tugging at them and saying, come on, what are you doing sitting here? What are you doing? And loosely translated is they were waiting for their souls to catch up. So I think that's a lovely story about us in this world today of how busy we get. So once everybody introduces themselves, we'll spend a little bit of time to let our souls catch up and be completely present. And then Steve will take it away with Gil. So Patty, how about you?
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this month's Future Capital Conversation. I'm thrilled to see all of these faces and really, I don't have much to say. I just want to get on with it.
Now that's how you do brief. Thank you, Patty.
Heather.
Well, I'll jump in.
Steve,
I'll
ladies
jump in
first.
here.
Do you want me to
I'll
jump in?
jump in.
Okay.
But, Heather, you've already been speaking, so I'm Steve Sheath, for those of you who don't know me or don't know anything at all about me. I'm 30 years in the nurturing and growth and grounding of what's now a very vibrant, sustainable, responsible impact investment industry. And proud to be on the leadership team of Future Capital.
And for those of you that don't know, we call him the grandfather of socially responsible investing in the most beautiful terms, and well deserved. We're honored to have everyone. I can go on and on, but I want to keep it brief as well. When Lawrence talks about this fertile garden of action, with bilaterally, individually, bilaterally, and collectively, it's just quite an honor. And I just want to welcome everyone home. Welcome home. So I'm glad that we're all together. Lawrence, I'm going to pass it right to you.
Great. So let's go into a moment of silence and let our souls catch up. And then Steve, when you feel so inspired, just take us on.
Okay, when you're ready, come on back. All right, it is my great pleasure to introduce my friend, Gil Friend. Yeah, Gil, you must have gotten, some ribbing about your name over the years.
Just a little bit.
Those are some stories I hope to share with you at some point when we can get back to having a beer together,
Absolutely.
But I do want people to know that you are the founder, the chair, the CEO of Natural Logic, which helps companies, and you and your team help companies design, implement, and measure profitable sustainability strategies. You're also the founder of Critical Path Capital, which I know you're going to be talking about today. But most importantly, you're a systems ecologist and business strategist and a prolific author, a keynote speaker, named to, as an inaugural member of the Sustainability Hall of Fame. And I bet there's not a lot of people know there even is a Sustainability Hall of Fame. But it's really cool that, that I can say that about you. I actually know a couple of your colleagues who went over for that, inaugural event hosted by the International Society of Sustainability Professionals. Gil, you've got so much to offer, and we're only giving you a few minutes today, so I know you're going to make the most of it. But I want to encourage everybody on the call to, to listen carefully, closely, and to capture some things, perhaps some questions that we can circle back to a little bit later. So Gil, step into our spotlight here this morning. Thank you.
Okay, Steve, thank you so much for that kind introduction, and good morning and welcome everybody. I'm really delighted and honored to be here with you. I've got 12 minutes. Let me try to do 4 things. Give you a very quick perspective on my 50 years of exploration and work in this field. Talk about the devil's bargain of conscious capital. And then reflect a little bit on my critical path currently. Given that experience and that assessment of conscious capital, what am I doing in the world to try to contribute to moving this game forward? So a little bit of history, 50 years in 2 minutes. I found my way to this work of advising corporations as a fulcrum for the transformation, primarily through Buckminster Fuller. Almost 50 years ago, I spent a summer with him and his team, for kid fresh out of college, and had my entire head and orientation in the world turned around in something called the World Game Workshop, which is a month-long, round-the-clock design charrette for the planet, looking at the question of how do we contribute to a world that works for 100% of humanity in the shortest possible time through spontaneous cooperation without ecological offense or the disadvantage of anyone. And that hit me as a 23-year-old, and I said, sign me up. That's my work. And I learned three things in that. One is that this is possible. There is no technical or resource barrier to us being successful on this planet. The barriers are somewhere else in our will, in our institutions, in how we operate, but it's not a physical constraint. Second is that we are Terrans, as the French philosopher Bernard Latour puts it, creatures of terra, living on this planet with trillions of other Terrans in a tissue-thin film of life wrapped around this ball of rock, hurtling through space, and we are bound together. And it's might be useful to recognize that solidarity, or that possibility of solidarity. And third, that the guide to success is the 3.8 billion years or so of open source research and development on how to have this thing work. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. The R&D's been done, it's there. So I've applied that over the last 30 years, advising some of the world's most respected corporations at bringing that perspective together with the perspective of business and business strategy. And what we've been able to find and promise to our clients is that looking through an ecological lens at their business, not as a nice to do, not as corporate social responsibility, not as philanthropy, but as core to the business, a driver of strategy that unlocks innovation and effectiveness and brand value and so forth, we can unlock massive value. And just one case in point, because there's no time, working with a highly regarded, you'll know the name but I can't say it, $6 billion manufacturing company, we found value that they had not seen and could not see, and their assessment of the value, not ours, but theirs, was about $6 billion that you couldn't see on their balance sheet, and you couldn't see in their P&L, and you couldn't see it in any of their management systems. But something else could disclose that and enable them to get it. So that's the background that I'm coming from. Conscious capital and conscious capitalism, Lawrence knows I've given him a hard time about this over the year or so that we've known each other, questioning what does conscious mean. I like the summary you gave at the start, Lawrence. I think that was the clearest that I've heard it from you. But it's it's often a very vague and subjective term. And as I think through it, what sort of distills out for me is that consciousness is about awareness of context. The broader context than just the money, the cares that we carry into the world as living beings, the commitments that we make to each other around those cares. That's where, and the impact, of course, that we have around what we care about, rather than trying to separate those out into two different worlds. We bring that together with capitalism, or what I'm lately calling capitalism with a hyphen. A system that privileges capital above all other value. It's structurally flawed. I guess, let me be neutral, say it's structurally challenged. It carries within it structural problems that we need to address. But before I get to that, to the commitment, Terry Molnar summarized this very beautifully a couple of days ago in one of our communications. You think about the stack of priorities. California, where I live, has been an innovator in energy futures for about 50 years. And one of the things we've developed is what we call a loading order, which is the priority that utility companies must work through in order to get their rates approved through the regulatory process. And we did it differently. We said the priority, in that case, the priority was going to be efficiency, and then renewables, and then electrification. And that's the order we're working through. And that's why this economy has doubled or tripled in size without increasing energy use per capita over the past 30 years. The loading order for us in conscious capitalism is, number one, the common good, because we are all members of human society and the living world together. Number two is honoring individual freedom and the capacity of people to be creative and innovation to emerge within that. And third is profit, not as the central driver, but as the consequence of doing those other things right. But here we are in a system that raises the question, I think this is from David Suzuki, of why are we driven to spend money that we don't have, to buy things that we don't need, to impress people that we don't like. And to do all that in a way that destroys the living systems that we depend on. So here we are in late finance capitalism, massively successful, has driven enormous innovation in the world, has lifted billions of people out of poverty, has given us supercomputers in our pockets and all kinds of cool stuff. But it's founded on extraction without reciprocity, alienation without relationship, accumulation without limit, abstraction without grounding, and generation without regeneration. And all of this is carried in a market system that we call a free market system that lies. Adam Smith, I think, said that perfect markets depend on perfect information, and we don't have that because the prices that we pay for things don't reflect their true cost. And so the rational actor cannot make rational decisions if the information that he or she is being fed lies. So that's sort of the context that I'm living in here. So within that, where do I find myself? Is it possible to make a difference within this devil's bargain? I think it is. And at this point of my life, I'm doing less of the consulting, but really focusing in three areas. One is bringing my experience in systems and strategy and pattern recognition and trend recognition to climate finance. How do we organize our financial moves and our financial systems to better engage these challenges? Two primary places I'm doing that. One is with Future Capital, as Lawrence referred to before, and we'll have more to say about that in, I guess, the next month or two, probably, about what that project is. And second, working with the challenge of financing climate adaptation for the San Francisco Bay Area. One of the world's leaders in climate initiatives, and yet like everybody else, what we're doing is woefully inadequate to the challenge ahead of us. And the finance tools that we have are woefully inadequate as well. So we're trying to invent something new here that hopefully we can give away to the rest of the world. Number two, looking at how to turn the middle market. So there's been a lot of sustainability innovation among the global corporates for decades, and Steve knows this very well, has hosted many of them. His member companies have invested in many of them. We see companies, from Levi's to Unilever, who are doing a good job of integrating these concerns. We see at the level of startups an enormous emergence of climate-focused and energy-focused startups at the other end of the scale, and in the middle market, there's a gap. Think about companies of 50, 100, 500, 1,000 employees who are doing the yeoman's work day in and day out of making the bolts and shipping the furniture and so forth, without R&D departments, without much attention to climate and the challenges that are coming. How do we engage that part of the market in a way that builds their resilience and capacity and builds value for investors? So that's what we're looking at with Critical Path Capital, a family of funds that's emerging, trying to address the dual challenges of sustainability and democracy, a word that you don't hear talked about very much in conversations about capitalism.
Gil, I hate to do this to you.
Yeah.
There's going to be time to layer a few more things on as we proceed through the morning here. But I do think we need to stop.
I'm at the end. I just want to say one more thing. The third thing that I'm focusing my attention on is generating and hosting meaningful conversations that move worlds. And with that, Steve, over to you.
So are we. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Patty, step up.
You're on mute, Patty.
Thank you.
And I'm putting Gil's contact information in the chat for everyone.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks so much, Gil. It's always wonderful to hear from you. I have the pleasure and the honor to introduce you to Dr. Ash Bhachary. I met Ash a year ago, or last March, when I was invited to speak at the World Sustainable Development Forum. I was invited by his father, who many of you may know, Dr. R.K. Pachauri, who sadly died last February. And Dr. Pachauri was the chairman of the IPCC and I was really privileged to have been invited to speak at that forum, but the real privilege was meeting Ash and his sister Shanali. And what I want to, I'm going to talk a little bit about Ash's accomplishments in his career, but first I just want to say, Ash is like I said earlier before we started, to me, he reminds me of the father of the world, and he's a young man, but he has, you just feel embraced and part of his family the moment you meet him. And he has an extraordinary capacity to do that, which is really wonderful for all of us and for the world because of his commitment to the POP movement, which POP stands for Protect Our Planet. And it is a youth climate activist movement. And in fact, some of those youth are here. So Ash is helping to cultivate, educate, connect, and support and empower the 23-year-old Gil friends of the future who are all, finding their way to really find what it is that what's their purpose, as Lawrence was mentioning before, and how to express that in the world. And Ash is supporting that. So he has been engaged with information technology development research. He's his PhD is in decision behavior and master's in international management, has worked with McKinsey and many other organizations, but really I think his passion is POP, and I'm really excited to introduce him and have him share his experience with POP and his and help us understand how we can engage with the youth for the world we all want to see. So take it away, Ash.
Thank you, Patty. I just want to say that I'm deeply humbled and honored to have this incredible opportunity to be here together with you. And I feel equally, if not more, blessed and grateful to have had the good fortune of meeting with you. And like I always say that, my first, it was an instant connection. So really very precious. Greetings, everyone. I just want to start by saying that this is an extraordinary opportunity to be part of this very special Future Capital conversation. Thank you, Patty, Lawrence, Heather, Steve, and the beautiful Future Capital community. I'm really delighted to be here with you. The POP movement, where POP stands for Protect Our Planet, like Patty just said, is built and founded on staunch values of love and respect. We embrace everyone. We believe filling the universe with love and goodness is the first step to spreading these values beyond to protect our planet and all its inhabitants. After all, you can only give when you are full. We believe in overflowing. It is only with love, a sense of tranquility and peace that we can spread the message and do so while leading by example. For this reason, we call ourselves the POP family and live true to family values. As a child, my dad once said to me that we are, and I quote, one for all and all for one. That is exactly the value that we live by and embrace at the POP movement, which Dad and I founded together on Earth Day 2016. Like all other families, we embrace heterogeneity. We're very heterogeneous and have all forms of diversity. In our family of about 1.2 million plus, from close to 100 countries now, we have youth from big cities with bright lights, fast cars, and high-speed fiber optic internet, as well as youth with no fuel, no power in the sense of electricity, or who even know where their next meal is coming from. For example, a 15-year-old young lady a real pop star today, who comes from a very challenged background in a developing country, was raped 2 years ago. As a result, she became a teen mom, giving birth to a child who was born with a congenital defect. She was torn and she felt her life had reached a dead end. After joining the pop movement about a year ago, this young lady is now a blazing climate activist in her country and globally. She's a strong community leader and a highly sought after climate advocate. She also talks extensively to radio stations, to media and others to amplify her voice on climate action and youth leadership. I have many more stories of people from east to west who are shining because they believe in themselves today and have found their ability to spread the light. We have members of our family who have never seen us and never will, given their differently abled capabilities. But they do feel the power of love and solidarity that the family embraces. The point is that every young person has potential, a reason for being, a unique, bright, and beautiful light, positivity, and much to give the universe. It's a matter of bringing the best out in people and allowing them to catalyze their potential. We do see and reflect out into the universe what we believe, what we stand for, and have deep within our hearts, minds, and souls. We use science and knowledge as the basis to inspire youth to take education, to take action to protect our planet and do everything they can to be all that they can be in the process. In fact, our tagline is youth inspired by knowledge. They find the best versions of themselves and then get even better. They tap their potential and catalyze change in their own lives, in their homes, in their communities, schools, colleges, universities, cities, and beyond. For example, our pop family in Germany has now adopted photovoltaic solar and climate technology in its school, nearly eliminated its water footprint, and reduced its paper usage by 80,000 sheets of paper a year. But now has begun affecting change in its city by engaging its citizens, local governments, and many more youth. Irrespective of which country people come from, love and respect are the common language that are spoken in the pop movement. These values are driven by many young people who return to live, love, and give back, many times returning from a breaking point or a point of no return. They do not, they reach a point where at that stage where they question their very identities or orientations and are challenged because of a lack of self-respect or self-acceptance. How can one love all creatures and species that we are so blessed to share this planet with when one doesn't love oneself? In fact, one loathes oneself and one's life is sort of at a point of standstill and one struggles to accept oneself for who one is. How can we spread the message of peace amidst inner chaos and extreme turmoil within? We work with kids who are 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 and above. Their experience of this pandemic, in fact, and its resulting isolation is not the same as it is for you and me. These are adolescents, pre-adolescents, and they're still developing. In fact, their cognitive and emotional capabilities are still in formulation. They're at a tender age, but even older youth are struggling, as are so many adults and seniors too. In fact, we don't quite know what the implications of the pandemic will be on all of us and generations to come, just merely because of what we're experiencing. And it's for this reason that we started using technology to connect youth on and across continents during the lockdown. And this allowed them to amplify their voices, share their actions, connect and feel stronger than ever as family. After all, the moments which have changed the course of history have been when people like you and I have gotten together in those days, maybe around a fire to tell our stories, share music, dance and tales. But in this case, when we talk about collectivizing people, creating movements by coming together, it's really when, for example, we reflect back and think of freedom movements, civil rights movements, and so on. It's always been when people have gotten together. In this case, of course, we do have technology to aid us, but we try and utilize offline environments as well to push an outreach. And actually, that's what's got us in contact with several young groups, for example, the Ghetto Triplet Kids from Uganda, as well as the Youth Orchestra from Latin America, that has faced unprecedented challenge in this period, but they have shown up. And I want to highlight the example of the Youth Orchestra because they have lost members of the orchestra to COVID, to hunger, and to other disease. But the important thing is that whatever it is, they're relentless, they're inspired, and they keep on keeping on. So we work together with them, their families, and their communities, and we'll continue to do so. Networking and cross-learning is definitely not new to the pop movement. It's very central to what we do. And in fact, we recently conducted what's called the Second International Conference and Pop Festival. And I just want to say, we call it the festival because we really want to celebrate and highlight the hope. And we want to celebrate coming together as a family. And we do have a window of opportunity, and we see hope in that. And when I say window of opportunity, I mean to take action to protect our planet. This event, of course, was 100% online, but we reached out to everyone from indigenous communities to talent in Africa and Latin America, Asia, the Middle East, North America, the Caribbean, and literally from coast to coast across the world. And in fact, Patty and Lawrence and Heather conducted workshops during the festival, which were profoundly valued by youth and their families. We had 12 workshops, 44 sessions, including those with music and dance from the remotest corners of the world, 71 countries, 74 global leaders and heads of states and governments, 60 partners, and close to 100,000 youth who continue to tune into the festival, which took place over 5 days from December 1 to 5, 2020. We have people from Brazil to Brisbane and workshops and sessions from artificial intelligence to yoga, to tapping the potential of your inner mind and energy, to finding reason for being and existing. So no matter what field or focus areas the young people from the pop movement will pursue as they grow up to become adults, these values of positive, firm, and strong beliefs around that are founded on love, respect, and mindfulness, they will carry with them. Additionally, while we do focus on youth, the pop movement is truly intergenerational. We have people from ages 5 to 85 that were at the festival and events and activities that we conduct routinely. The pandemic has taught us that health, our own health, and that of the planets are inextricably linked. We need to come together to protect our planet and all its inhabitants, else what lies in store for us will make COVID-19 look pale in comparison. The role of youth and its collaboration with every generation lies at the heart of the solution, which must be founded on values of respect, compassion, empathy, mindfulness, voice, dignity, and identity. We can only give when we are full and overflowing. We radiate what we have within to the external world. We all have light within, which we can illuminate the universe with. Let's fill up and share our love, light, and wisdom. At this minute and eternally, I overflow. I love you, family, and I'm with you in mind, heart, and spirit. Thank you, and gratitude from my heart to yours.
Thank you so much, Ash. Beautiful, beautiful. Really appreciate it.
Thank
And
you.
we'll have an opportunity after Amanda speaks for questions and conversation.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So Lawrence.
Thank you. All right. Wow. How juicy is this? Good stuff. So, man, I met Amanda in a small little office in downtown Manhattan back in the old days when you could actually meet people. And that was when, Amanda, I think you were running Conscious Capitalism pretty much, right? With a small little adventure for yourself. And so of you people who know me, I'm always trying to, one of our mottos is when in doubt, play. So I always love to have fun. But I think, Amanda, on that note, you're like one of the few women that I know that can actually handle 3 names as your name. So I actually love saying Amanda Kathryn Roman because, man, do you carry it? There's I'm going to read a little bit of a formality here, but before I do that, I really want to say that one of the things we'll have in this conversation is there's so much content out there today. We all know that, especially, I mean, one of the nice things about this 2-dimensional reality that we get to play in is that we get to connect with people at some level. The thing that's difficult about it is there's just so much out there, and there's a bit of overload, of course, I think for all of us. But one of those, which means I, like 99% of the stuff that I would like to listen to, I don't listen to. And there's this podcast that you guys are going to hear about that Amanda Kathryn Roman is doing that is just absolutely mind-blowing. It is so incredibly well produced. Everybody on this call, you've really got to give it a shot, and we'll make sure we put the links in there. But here's my formality. I will behave. So she is the co-founder of the Institute of Corporate Transformation, the Bridge Alliance, and the Living Room Conversations, as well as the CEO of AKR Collaborations. Her work currently focuses on building pathways to implement the core competencies of stakeholder capitalism, which is the part of that, the main theme of that podcast that I was referring to. Amanda helps companies grow people, build new coalitions, develop ecosystems, and produce signature events through courageous relationships that increase opportunities, social impact, and mutual prosperity. How'd I do, Amanda? And I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. We can just go back and forth, or you can let it rip, and then we're all going to get together on the couch and have some fun.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Lawrence. There's so many directions that I could go. So I don't know if you want to invite me to talk. Would you like me to talk more about the podcast itself and the general work of the Institute?
Yeah, let's start there because I can't help
Okay.
myself. I mean, that is just like ridiculously good, and everybody will listen to it.
Well, I appreciate that. And for those of you that we'll get the link into the chat box, but the podcast is called 10 Things You Should Know About Stakeholder Capitalism. And essentially, first, I also just want to thank not just Lawrence, but the whole team here at Future Capital for the invitation. And to my co-panelists, super inspired, Gil and Ash, by what you've shared, and looking forward to connecting with more of you as we go through this conversation. And I think that much of my work, and to connect with Ash's story, I was given an opportunity at the age of 11 that kind of inspired me and taught me how to believe in myself, engaging with local community members. And so over the course of the past 30 years, I've designed a number of ecosystems, I guess is a way of thinking about it. And I kind of started in the civil sector, public sector, and now I'm really focused on the private sector. And when I do that, I kind of go through what I now call a virtuous growth cycle, where I'm looking at essentially 6 steps. And the podcast is a real important part of that flywheel, where first I'm really looking at the problem that we're trying to solve. And then, where can we start? Where can we make some early interventions with early adopters? And then who are those people? I think we all know in this work that we're engaged in, data is important, facts are important, but stories are really important. And it's really important to be able to tell those stories in a way that breaks through some of the white noise or reaches the people that need to hear it. And I tend to work on the early part of the change curve, with those innovators and early adopters, and seed systems and structures that then will hospice the old systems as we're co-creating new ones. That's kind of my sweet spot. And so the podcast is really telling the story of the business leaders that really are working beyond profit and taking into consideration the broad terminology that I'm couching my work under of stakeholder capitalism, because much like Lawrence described at the beginning, I've worked within organizations that have branded, sometimes trademarked, processes and concepts, and I've always remained pretty brand agnostic, and the work is the most important to me of connecting the folks there. And so stakeholder capitalism seemed to be the term that the media was talking about. And so we wanted to offer not only the content around what that means, and the project related to that was the predecessor to the podcast is called the Stakeholder Score, which is just stakeholderscore.com, where we really talk about management competencies that we are helping business leaders integrate into their companies. And then the podcast follows along after that to share the stories so that people know you can do it too. It's not just these big, huge companies or icons that you might be familiar with, but there are ways to do it. And then the rest of my work. Yeah.
Amanda, I wanted to say also in that podcast, one of the things that's so cool about it is that, you know, it carries through the story. So it's well produced and you engage. But man, there are such good lessons in those stories that are just, you know, I've got a couple tagged that I've gone back to twice already that helped me inform, you know, it's like the inspiration that I want to do at Conscious Capitalism. I'm sorry, at Conscious Capital, but I haven't quite got my words, or even more importantly, the practices around how to actually, you know, implement those things. So it really balances those two nicely.
No, I appreciate that. And that's one of the reasons that we created the podcast, was we wanted it. I do a lot of work that I then open source so that people that need it can use it to accelerate all of this work. And so we're hoping that the podcast, the name of it is the 10 Things You Should Know About Stakeholder Capitalism. I saw someone just ask that in the chat. We hope that if the story resonates with you, you can share it and it can advance your work. They're all about 20 minutes, so they're really short. And we've been getting really rave reviews on them from people in a variety of sectors. You know, actually, I know someone else that's in the Sustainability Hall of Fame, in addition to Gil, was Ray Anderson, the famed founder and leader of Interface. And so we do a lot. I actually work with the chief sustainability officers on our team at the Institute for Corporate Transformation. So one of the podcast episodes focused squarely on climate through the story of Interface and that journey that they have taken. If you're not familiar, as a carpet company that has done some of the most amazing work in the field of sustainability. So we really tried to cover the gamut of industry and type with that podcast. So thanks for posting that link there, Heather. And the other piece that is related to that work that might be helpful to some of you is making sure that once those stories are out there, if there are people that might be in maybe that middle market that someone was talking about earlier, where there aren't a lot of resources, I've developed a number of programs where I have offerings for consultants that want to learn how to do this work in kind of a smaller scale, not at the level of McKinsey and Bain, but maybe a smaller consulting program. It's a year-long program that we're on our 4th class of right now, working with people all around the world, helping companies and shepherding them through that process. And recently launched at the end of this first podcast mini-series, a program called the Entrepreneur Accelerator, where you don't have to be the CEO, you don't have to be in a very high level executive program, but we work with you in cohorts to start to bring your company along on this mindset shift, where you're understanding that when you put purpose first and when you think about helping people thrive and taking care of the environment and many of the themes you've heard from today, not only are you more profitable, but everyone thrives and everyone is more prosperous. And so that program really teaches that mindset shift. And we're working in partnership with essentially the person that teaches change management at Harvard, of how change really happens, not the straight line that everybody thinks it is, but kind of the squiggly line that I'm sure most of us on this call are more familiar with. And then the other thing that I'll be launching in the new year is called the Changemakers Growth Formula. So teaching the structural things that need to be in place for companies that I've learned after doing this many times over and helping organizations to kind of tune up for taking that courageous action as they move forward. Sometimes folks forget that infrastructure is really important for sustainability. I think a lot of us on this call probably understand that, but an investment in that early on really allows the impact to grow in proportion to the purpose that people at the organization have to move forward. And then the capital piece that's probably most interesting for this group is I'm also working, I kind of go upstream and look at power sources and spheres of influence. And clearly, even if you have the most conscious business, there's a lot of challenges that come in when you meet unconscious capital or unconscious investment. And so I've been doing a lot of work in the investment space, which is how Lawrence and I came across each other a couple of years. And I'm working on a really exciting project right now with a private equity firm that is working with family offices around the world to basically like reaggregate and recapitalize all of the assets in their portfolio to utilize these stakeholder capital management principles. So there's a lot of exciting space going on in the investment area. And I help connect investment folks with business leaders so that they can really learn from one another to do that.
Beautiful. Well, it's amazing, all of the work. Once in a while when I feel like I'm really trying to cram a little too much into my life, I meet people like Amanda, Kathryn, Roman, and I'm humbled. So yeah, that's beautiful, Amanda. And I think it's a perfect time now for us to kind of segue. And if we can all kind of, because we have to live in this, I don't know about everybody else, but I'm sure everybody agrees we're pretty tired of this two-dimensional reality and can't wait to get out there and touch and hug and share with each other. But in the meantime, we're stuck with this. So maybe if everybody kind of visualizes, I'm hanging out right now on a couch on a stage with Amanda, Ash, and Gil, and you guys all have microphones. They're all live. And it's a big family conversation, and we can just all jump in and talk, because one of the things that is an absolute truism of this group, and this is not ego, this is just reality, is that there are such profound people who are part of Future Capital. It humbles me every moment when I think about it, from all around the globe. So I guarantee you that whatever you want to do, as long as it's, obviously aligned of doing really good in the world and this nexus of consciousness and capital, we are 1 degree away from your answer. And I can pretty much guarantee that here with this group, with the people who are going to be listening to this recording, the original founding members of Future Capital, and then this huge expanding group. So please don't be shy. Remember, individually, bilaterally, and collectively, we're talking about connecting to make the world a better place. And Future Capital is really, really happy to be that, Oz behind the curtain that never wants to come out. And so please shine away. So Amanda, what are your thoughts about what you saw with connections with you guys, and what's on your mind in general? And I'm going to start with you on the couch with an open-ended question.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think that the work that everyone is doing here, I hope we hear from a lot of the participants on the call as well as the panelists, because I find those are often the most juicy interactions. But I think that I really resonated deeply with everything that you shared, Ash. I learned a little bit when I learned we were going to be on this call together beforehand. But having gotten kind of my start in kind of community organizing and being involved with, people who are much older than me, working in with local elected officials, and I became a spokesperson, just like the powerful story you told of the young woman on radio and TV. And I got that experience at a really, really, really young age, and I've been reflecting on that a lot in current days, when people like Lawrence will say, how do you manage all this stuff? Like, how do you get it all done? And I think a big part of it is that belief that was cultivated in me, in myself at a young age. And then I have my own faith practices as well. But I think this is such a crucial thing that if you're not already engaged with youth in some way, maybe there's not a formal way through your organization or your company or your efforts, I think finding a way to either mentor a young person or help connect them with resources, especially while we're all in this more isolated state. And as you pointed to, Ash, it's impacting them at a different way. I think it's crucial to the work that we're doing. I mean, we're all trying to co-create a better world for the future. And so I don't know, Ash, if there's specific ways you want to mention people can get involved with your organization, but I did want to point that out to all of us who I think are change makers, to really look for that opportunity to engage the youth in some way or support them. It's really important, and they're gonna cultivate the solutions that we ultimately need together in the future.
That's right. And Ash, you can speak to, we've been going back and forth, having a lot of fun talking about how we really are looking to Ash to be the portal connection for Future Capital for the global youth. Now, we have some connections with other groups, but with Ash's momentum and just the connection we have, really looking at that being a channel directly into Future Capital. So what else? What do you think, Ash?
I think it's absolutely fantastic. And there's multiple reasons why. I don't really need to get into them a whole lot, but one of the things I would like to underscore is that it's a very strong set of values. And I believe that it is these values, irrespective of what people do as they grow up, they will develop a strong foundation, which will definitely pave the way to a sustainable world, one that's filled with goodness and mindful approaches to addressing all kinds of issues, irrespective of which fields they'll pick to take forward. And therefore, I really see this as a very powerful community to make a connection with the youth. And I know that, I know we had a sort of a small experience, but indeed a very powerful one during the festival. And I highlighted that just a few minutes ago. We had Lawrence and Heather, and we had Patty too, who conducted workshops, and we have young people who absolutely loved it. And I have to say that I've had messages not only from the young people, but also from their families. So clearly, the message is spreading, and this is exactly what we need. And when you have a good thing out there and goodness out there, I think once it sort of goes out and reaches and touches people, it will multiply. And we'd love to be able to have more young people be part of this community, share and learn. And I also hope we can continue to build on some of the workshops, because I think that, it just allows a different kind of processing. I also want to say that, what Amanda said about, young people just having a space to be able to be listened to, heard, trusted, and believed in. It is something that can metamorphose. It can metamorphose things in ways that we perhaps we can't even imagine. And so I do think, Amanda, I love what you just said. I hope we can make connections. I think that the moment there is an integration that's meaningful, you'll find that there'll be connections with individuals, subgroups or larger groups that'll happen, and it'll happen organically. I think that, this is the kind of thing. And I just want to point out one thing. We have young people who are 15 and 16 years old. I talked about an artificial intelligence workshop. These kids are, in fact, in New Jersey, and they're in school, and they're 16 years old, and they trained a whole bunch of people, professionals, semi-professionals, on artificial intelligence and how to use it for climate action and sustainability. And so there's really a range of different things. I mean, I think we have a lot to learn from each other.
Yeah. And, one of the things I think of is that, often when I'm working with some of the youth and we start leaning into the capital conversation, right? And it happens not just with youth, it's with everybody. There tends to be this like haze that comes over. It's like, oh boy, that's like too distant from me. And when, we can connect people like with masters like Gil with such incredible history of experience and create an environment where it's safe to ask those dumb questions, because they're not dumb questions, right? And really start to learn from each other. There's so much acceleration, right, that we can really have take place.
Absolutely. And I just want to say, I love the mention of the word sort of mentorship that you and Amanda are just used, because, on the pop movement, we don't call ourselves anything other than mentors. So we have a range of mentors. We have mentors who are sort of focused on medium and a whole bunch of other areas, and youth mentors. So really the whole thing is about mentorship. And as soon as, young people are able to be comfortable and safe in a space, everything is okay to talk about and learn, and we learn from each other. So I love that concept, and I think it'll go very far. We would love to be able to find connections between the youth of the pop movement and amazing experiences and mentorship that I know we can find within the community right here.
Excellent.
It will be an incredible coming together.
And speaking of the community, because I know, I can cheat because I know so many of you. I really want to open it up because I know there's some really cool questions here. So open up your mic and, just whatever's come up for you that might be a connection or a question or something you want to say. Let's just open it up in general for the whole family.
So let me jump in here, Lawrence. So I also experienced the World Game probably 2 decades after you did, Gil, because I think you said it was 50 years ago. But it was a memorable experience in a specific way, and you alluded to it. As I stood on the gymnasium floor on the map of the world, I asked the person who was leading the conversation, how much protective atmosphere do we have? And I was expecting him to say, and it's the thickness of a nickel on a gymnasium floor. And literally at that point, and this I think is perhaps a really fabulous lesson if it hasn't already been shared with the youth. Because for me, even though I wasn't a youth quite so much at the time, it was just such an eye-opening thing. It was like the proverbial 2x4 up the side of the donkey's head to say, we are in this together. This really is spaceship Earth. We breathe the same air, drink the same water.
Let me give you another.
Yeah.
Let me give you another perspective on it, which is how I heard it from Bucky. Imagine a ball like the size of a basketball, about 12 inches in diameter. Okay, imagine that it's not a basketball, but it's stainless steel, polished steel. Okay, mirror finish on a ball of stainless steel. That ball is rougher than the planet. Our highest mountains and our lowest ocean trenches are lost in the smoothness of that sphere, but it goes another step. If you breathe on it, and you fog it, a little condensation of water on the sphere, that fog is thicker than the biosphere. Everything that sustains us, everything that we care about is in that little film of condensed breath on the stainless steel sphere. It's tiny. That's where we all are.
And I think that's so powerful and so important. And, if you get it early, then the rest of your life changes in such a meaningful way. Anyway, I'll step back.
Yep.
Yeah.
That brings us to that, core sin of this temporary delusion in these human suits of thinking that we're separate from each other, which is why we exist, as future capital. Is when we become more conscious, part of the benefit of that is realizing that that is a delusion. And when you're performing capital and you have that level of consciousness, of course you don't hurt others or the Mother Earth, because you're just hurting yourself. It becomes just this ridiculous, obvious existence that we are hoping to lift humanity up to.
So, one of the challenges is how do you enable more and more people to have that experience, to have that moment of realization, to have, the visceral in the body, not just intellectual understanding, but, felt understanding that we are all connected and all depend on each other, and not just the people, but the four-leggeds and the six-leggeds and the eight-leggeds and the ones with no legs. Yeah.
Yes. And so, Niita, did I pronounce your name properly?
No, you pronounce the I and the Y both, Nianta. Yes, you saw me.
Yes.
I actually wanted to reflect on what both Amanda and Ash talked about youth. If you just think about the statistics alone, I think in the US, the Gen Z makes up 40% of the consumers. I still don't believe it, but it's there written, and they will be 40% of the workforce by 2026. And you think about how they are, how different they are than even any of you that are millennials. Ash, you probably are. Apologies. But there's a huge difference. I have a son who's a millennial, one who is Gen Z, and I've had lots of young people I've worked with. There's something about this generation and what you're talking about, Ash. They want to go change the very world they're living in. They are at once feeling no hope. They see a dystopian future. And at the same time, they think they have the power to completely change the world, what their values are, everything. And so I get to see this with what I do. We created an initiative called Gen Z for the Trees. It's run by the young ones. An 18-year-old, she's 19 now, leads that for us at Rainforest Partnership. And I only went to their first meeting about 3 weeks ago, and Kathryn's going to be one of the people that is going to speak and inform them. But the kind of work they're doing, nobody's done it. And they're charting this out, and what they're doing is, and when we started this, what we talked about is the current trajectory does not have to be their destiny. To see a dystopian future, to see no hope, to feel as hopeless and helpless is not the way. And so how does the pop movement, or how does this this initiative that they've created, which is different from an activist. They're more actually engaging and actually talking about holding corporations to a different standard. I mean, it's more involved. I can share a couple of things about it later. But the way they think, for us not to engage that generation is just criminal, you know. And the thing that I would like to say is, the more time you spend with them, and I'd invite any of you that can, it brings hope. It changes the way I think about things. It just makes you smile. It's just amazing. They're so earnest, so amazing. And so I'm hoping that I'll be able to invite you, Gil, and we've met in Austin a few years ago. I don't know if you remember, but it would be great if some of you came and talked to that gang and some of the other folks that are doing this important work. And they're bringing along people from around the world, just as Ash was saying. So I'm super excited that you're bringing up the youth end of the conversation.
Excellent.
Great.
Yeah, the other thing, Lawrence, I just want to add really quickly that kind of the last step in my process is working on educating the next generation of leaders. And so we're bringing a lot of the content that we've created for business leaders and kind of repackaging it for undergrads and for business schools right now is where we're starting. And I loved what you just said, Nianta, because it's like, as they learn the process, they are bringing along more people. So obviously going through a dean or the head of a school is going to be a much more bureaucratic process, but we're finding those innovative professors and getting the content in that way, or doing it as a seminar as opposed to a class for credit. And then as soon as the students are exposed to it, then they are clamoring for more, and they are really bringing along their teachers and their deans and the administrators within the school. So, there's lots of examples of youth doing that, but it's happening, I think, at an exponential rate right now, which is very exciting.
Well, Amanda, that's a perfect time to be doing that, because colleges and universities are really shaken up by the pandemic. Their business model is maybe collapsing. They're reinventing themselves. There's some profound work on that being done at the University of Colorado Engineering School, of all places, bringing consciousness into.
I've spoken with those guys.
Fernando Flores and his team at the Pluralistic Networks are leading that. But these institutions don't know what their next move is. Yeah. And if you can bring them some next moves, I'd love to talk with you more about that.
Yeah, let's do that.
Great. I want to make sure, because part of, we can see the magic here is the connections that everybody's starting to feel. So don't be shy. If something's connected, make sure that you're reaching out. And if you don't want to talk, just do it through chat to make sure you get somebody's connection. But I want to highlight a couple people to kind of bring them up on the couch with us too, from things that have come up. One is when we talk about how do we raise consciousness. That's a big part of what we've been working with as well in tandem here at Future Capital. It's not just a name. And I'm inspired to maybe have my friend Patrick talk a little bit about that and some of the work that we're doing in that space, not necessarily formally, but his thoughts on that. And then after that, I want to call in on Amelia to talk briefly about some of the practical stuff we're doing in the world of land and Mother Earth, and how we're moving that out into the real capital world. And then also let's bring in the conversation of Ketan a little bit and talk about how we're working, from the top down with the big asset managers and money. So you can see the essence of what we're doing here. The overused, I know, quote of Einstein is no problem is solved by the same consciousness that created it, right? But it's overused for a reason. And so at Future Capital, what we do is we bring in multi-stakeholder positions, whether it's youth, whether it's private banking, public banking, whether it's indigenous wisdom. We all need to come together without dogmas, without borders, and we all need to have this conversation because we all lend a piece. As my friend Steve always talks about, is the hand on the elephant, right? We all have a hand on the elephant. We just don't know what it is yet until we all come together. And so, Patrick, over to you. Talk a little consciousness for us, would you? Bring it up on the couch for us.
Oh, Lawrence, consciousness. We all have a choice and we all have a reason to be here or not. And we all have the choice to be who we are. And we all have the reason to be who we are and why we are. And that's, I think, the key for everything. We talk so much about peace on earth. Well, that's the peace in the world inside us that we can share with others. So I do believe that raising capital is about raising consciousness. And that's when we get conscious capital. And all leadership development comes from inner leadership development. And when the leader grows inside, he expands the space for people to grow. And that gives space to the organization to grow. So easy and so complex. Consciousness.
Thank you, Patrick. And I, other than me just loving hearing Patrick speak, as I know you all do, it's, you know, I'm very engaged with Patrick in our private work of the company in our programs for raising consciousness individually in our coaching side and our consulting side with organizations where we do that. And Patrick is the best in the world. So thank you, Patrick. I appreciate that. And then Amelia, I know it's hard to do like really quick, but maybe give it a shot, just a little flavor of this amazing work that you're doing out there in association with the indigenous world and the earth bonds and as a loosely loving connection project with Future Capital.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lawrence. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here, and I am just beaming with the inspiration from this call. Is just overwhelming almost. So thank you for that. And yeah, it's a very challenging thing to speak to very quickly. We really should take some time to have this conversation as Lawrence and I have had that time. But my work has really been in climate for many, many years, and I came to realize that in the climate conversation, you can't really talk about climate without talking about indigenous territories specifically, because they hold 80% of our remaining biodiversity. And it is an extremely important perspective to really focus on in my work currently is something that I feel very passionate about, because that biocultural connection between, we talk about Terrans and being citizens of this planet that sustains us and how to do that. The indigenous territories really hold that biocultural connection point in a way that's not just about, oh, humans are really bad for the planet, which I think is a sort of like dominant culture perspective. How can we be stewards, and not only stewards, but allies and representing this beauty that is here on this planet? So really focusing on those areas. And along with the Mother Earth Delegation of Original Indigenous Nations and the Fountain, which is an organization founded by Jyoti Ma, and Mindahi Basira, who has spoken here, we've been really focusing on new ways to deploy capital and new legal frameworks as well, in order to really understand how to protect these biocultural regions in accordance to original principles. So we're currently developing, along with Lawrence as one of our strongest allies, a concept called earth bonds, which is asset-backed bonds in order to really preserve these territories. And the mechanics of that we're working out currently and would love to present here at Future Capital, but would also love to connect with anybody who's interested in this work. And it's just such a valuable community here, such a rich community of incredible thinkers. So I'm just so honored to be a part of this. And thank you so much, Lawrence, for the opportunity.
Thanks, Amelia, and thank you for all that work you do. And so we will be talking more about that. We're, gosh, I'm probably twice a week or so now with Amelia in my spare time in that beautiful project and creating trouble, some help now and then. But these are the sleepy little things that are part of the wonderful legs that are growing out of Future Capital, and in a way that we can support each other a little bit. So I also wanted to have Ketan, if he's still around, to maybe say just a couple words about his incredible work, because I want our guests and now fellow members of Future Capital who've been here with us speaking to kind of interact a little bit with this once you hear about that. So, Kathryn, are you around? There you are. Perfect.
Yeah, sure. I'll really keep it short. But we took up the mission to see if we could galvanize 50 to 60 global financial institutions to share information with us, to see if we could establish what the common ground between them is on how they deploy capital. And to see if that capital is becoming a force for good in the world. And we define that as, do they adopt ESG policies all the way from the senior most board level of the organization all the way through to their operating practices, number one. Number two, do they make a conscious decision to sustainably apply their capital to sustainable causes in the world? And so these are now following through from ESG, which are policies and practices, to the allocation of capital itself. And then thirdly, do they take a stakeholder view beyond shareholders, where they care for their people, their communities, and the world at large? And what we've done is taken that framework and then looked underneath that for the metrics, collected the data, and established the initiatives they're taking. And we find they sit in three big groups. There is an enormous common ground. 100% of them have ESG practices. They have massive overlap, some between 60 and 80% on what they are defunding in the world. And then there is a big overlap, particularly focused on the SDGs and particularly on climate change, as to how they're now choosing to deploy their money and the capital. And they are effectively defunding people at an alarming rate for those that are getting defunded, who do things they think no longer sit comfortably with their values and their public position. And thirdly, they are not only giving charitable donations into the communities, but they're addressing big issues in the communities with real capital for issues such as Black equity, affordable housing, mass inclusion, education, saving the environment, and endangered species. So we're seeing that people who traditionally, probably only a decade or two ago, are now shifting their focus to become more conscious of how they deploy money. And we've produced a very extensive report for our sponsor at the UN to demonstrate that quantitatively and qualitatively, which we hope will get launched in the next few weeks. And it's been a team effort. I mentioned some of the names in the beginning, but it's been a team effort to try and get that done.
Yeah, I think the capital T, tireless team effort has been extraordinary with your leadership of what's gotten done, and what you've put behind this. And, this is a good segue briefly just to say, of course, I haven't mentioned it yet, but our wonderful partners at the United Nations Office for Partnerships and Will Kennedy, and also with UNCTAD and Carpenter, who are incredible, partners of ours in this mission, as well as the World Academy of Art and Science and Gary, of which there's a lot of cross, pollination here with some fellows of the World Academy here, Frank being one of them, of course, that I'm looking at right away. And of course, Rodolfo, and I'm sure I've missed others. But I want to make a little connection here too, Amanda. I think there could be some kind of interesting stuff that could happen with this project as it becomes more ready for public eyes here between you and Kathryn's leadership here with us.
Are you guys planning on putting together a report that kind of goes over that? Is that the plan? What these commonalities are, and then to kind of help connect those with new investors, or what's kind of, I remember I was actually on the call you presented on, Kathryn, so I remember hearing the overview of the program. What's kind of the next step that you guys are seeing there?
So Amanda, we've written, it's a tome, it's like a 110-page report, just full of lots and lots of numbers, case studies, just all the detail, and too much detail, frankly. But because of our sponsors at the UN, it has to have a certain formality to how we present it. So it articulates all this in a very detailed format. It also talks about the correlation between doing good and making money. And it essentially says, the more good you do, the more money you make. And so we've tried to quantify that to leaning on lots of studies in the world, but also taking the database we've now got, which is very interesting, and drawing on that to see how the high performers are doing good and how that translates into long-term performance for them.
If I could just add to this and brag on Kathryn for a moment, it's a 110-page tome, but Kathryn and his team have done a remarkable job on this, have lifted out from that, a very accessible visual summary. So, the massive concrete blocks are there for the UN, but the get it quickly is there for the busy executive.
That's
so
fantastic.
Both of those are in there.
Yeah, I would love to find whatever the right combination of a conversation is there, because I also work monthly with a salon with a partner in California in Silicon Valley that we're trying to educate investors in the Valley about ways to do investment differently. And so they're always looking for additional data points and ways to kind of see that that is the case. When you do more good work, you are actually more profitable. So I think there might be an opportunity to help spread that work through that network as well.
I would give one just quick kind of insight, I guess, on the report too, which is the report, of course, is all the financial institutions giving us information to produce these results, but they're in a transition. So they have also funded, of course, things that have damaged the world. And so, they're in this uncomfortable place where every day in the press, they'll be accused of doing something that no one likes, that is harmful. And at the same time, they're also trying to show that they're doing good. And I'm sure inside their organization, some of them feel the tension. But we are taking all of that and trying to point to where it might go in the report too. And there are 9 big themes that come out that are systemic and transforming for the world. And so we're hopeful that this spurs many other people in the industry, in the finance industry, to action.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Go ahead, Gil.
You amend it, and I'll add something. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think what you just shared is so important, that early adopters, the innovators at the beginning are often the ones that do have to stand publicly as they are in that place of transition and kind of leading the change. And so any type of support that we can provide for those, oftentimes the language we use at Conscious Capitalism is about meeting people where they're at on their journey. And I've heard other people reference that as well. So I think that's a very important part of this process to recognize and always look to support people in that transition period. So looking forward to that conversation.
Yep.
Please, Gil.
That's good. Yeah. That's one part of the theory of change that we're operating with here, Amanda, is that is to shine a light on and lift up the good stuff that folks are doing, not to Pollyannishly forget the other problems. Say, let's honor what you're doing, but then by pulling all this data together across these 60 companies, as Kathryn and his team have done, we highlight something else. So you may be sitting there at, pick a finance company at random and say, we're doing really good stuff. We've got all these programs we've integrated. Aren't we great? And now you can see yourself compared to 59 other peers. And all of a sudden you think, oh, wait a minute. We left this stuff out. Those guys are doing things we never thought of. These guys are doing things that we are doing, but they're doing it more effectively than we are. So it's a powerful opening for kind of self-reflection and learning. Yeah. And in our experience, 30 years of working with companies, that kind of comparative benchmarking is one of the most powerful door openers we've ever found.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And finding ways that you can continue to build those relationships so those companies can learn from each other. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yep.
Can you believe we have 2 minutes left? So I would like to say, if anybody has anything they want to just say, just unmute and say it. And I also want to remind everybody that in the chat section, if there's anything you want to link to or get to directly in there, go ahead and do that now. Also, Heather will be giving you, how you can connect to us going forward, and everybody else. But is anything that's like just screaming in somebody that they got to get out quick and say hello? Because go for it.
Yeah,
yes, I just want to say thank you.
Ernest.
Just thank you for the love and positivity and wonderful energy in here today. That's all.
Thank you, Ernie. And I'd like to make sure you and Amanda connect as well on the media front. Ernie he's doing this incredible work in his travel and connecting with human beings. That's I think, is it a PBS show? Sorry, who's running that?
Yeah, yes, it's on PBS.
Yeah, it's on PBS. It's extraordinary. It's really beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to say a big thank you too, and that I'd love to connect. Well, I'm going to definitely speak with you soon, Nianta, and also Amelia. I loved what you said. I think it's really, really important to work with the Indigenous community, and I'd love to have a conversation because, yeah, we have a lot of Indigenous community at the forefront of the pop movement, into really sort of many generations. So I'd love to pursue that conversation with you too. And many
Absolutely.
thanks. Yeah, I'd love that. Thank you.
Mm.
And thank you, Amanda and Gil. I look forward to staying in touch with you. It's been fantastic. I really want to convey my deepest thanks.
Great to share a platform with you both.
Thank you.
Ah.
And
Likewise.
the rest of the crowd here.
This is fantastic. I cannot believe it's the top of the hour. This is not the end of the conversation, but the beginning. I put in the chat a way to connect with us on Facebook, our private group, and mark your calendars. January 13th is the next on the second Wednesday of every month at 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. We gather like this. So I'll make sure that you all have an invite to the next one, but mark your calendars. And it is such a pleasure to be in everyone's presence. Thank you for surrounding your love. And as tradition, Lawrence, do you want to just lead us out into a moment of?
I would love to, but of course I'll do my little boyish thing. I love saying this every year. I'll see you everybody next year.
Yeah, but
So,
chief,
yeah,
our chief troublemaker over there.
let's move into a beautiful place of what we do at the end is just go into a meditative spot. I suggest that maybe we vision in our own way together, like each thread of a fabric, this beautiful fabric, what our piece is, and bringing together this beautiful new world that we visualize. And so if you just hold that truth of yourself and your own reason for being here, what your gift is in this fabric, that we put it out all together for a moment. And the way we do this is just drop off when you feel like dropping off. So thank you everybody for being you.
Thank you all.
To say thank you for another lovely day. Keep that.